gentlemen, this is Mr. Nolan, and I'll be doing your 5E and 5F notes on the Golden Age of Greece and Pericles. Alright, so for starters, we have this guy named Pericles. Pericles is an important figure. He's the ruler of Athens in a time between the Persian Wars and the Peloponnesian Wars. So he comes to power after Athens is burned down at the end of the Persian Wars, and he is going to be the most powerful person in the Athenian democracy. He has three goals. Those three goals are to strengthen Athenian democracy, to hold and strengthen the empire, and to glorify Athens. Now, when we mean empire, we're going to talk about what becomes an Athenian empire. The Delian League, which forms in the aftermath of the Persian War, is actually going to essentially become an Athenian empire. Athens runs the Delian League, and those city-states that are aligned with Athens will essentially do what they want. So Pericles is going to strengthen Athenian democracy, hold and strengthen the empire, and then when we mean glorify Athens, we're talking about construction. If you remember, at the end of the Persian War, Athens is burned to the ground. There's very little left. They have to build everything over again. So Pericles is going to preside over this golden age. He's going to rebuild Athens after Persian destruction. He presides over the building of the Parthenon and the Acropolis, both of which still stand today. And if you remember, the Parthenon is a temple that is made to honor Athena, and the Acropolis is just up on the mountaintop. All right, Greek architecture. A couple of things you're going to need to talk about Greek architecture. It's going to trace its origins to around 700 BCE along the shores of the Aegean Sea. A couple of major historical works of Greek architecture that are produced include things that we showed you in previous slides that I forgot to tell you, but specifically the Parthenon, the Acropolis, the Temple of Zeus Olympia, as well as the Oracle of Apollo, or the Temple of Apollo at Delphi. All of these are examples of Greek architecture. Other things that you need to learn about Greek columns. There are three types of Greek columns, and you need to know them. You need to know that there are Doric columns, which are the most simple, Ionic columns, which are a little more elegant, and then Corinthian columns are the most detailed, the most elegant, the most sophisticated columns that you have. Okay, you don't need to know much more than that. Just know that Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian is them in order from least elegant to most elegant. All right, and keep that abbreviation in mind as well. Okay, a little bit of classical Greek art. Greeks wanted to portray ideal beauty, not realism. Okay, as you can see here on our pot, I don't know how many guys have massive quads like that and perfectly formed calves, but apparently our hero on this pot does. Greek art values harmony, order, balance, and proportion. This is a standard that we call classical art. Okay, we don't do classical art now in modern times. We have modern art where we purposefully throw some of that stuff off. But they want perfection, harmony, order, balance, everything to be properly done. We're going to revisit classical art with the Renaissance because Renaissance painters and artists revisit this idea and move forward with it. A couple of other contributions that you're going to need to know. Our first recorded historical accounts are credited to two guys named Herodotus and Thucydides. Herodotus is the father of history. Thucydides also records it. In science, we've got a couple of important guys here. Archimedes is going to invent the lever. He invents it as a way to hurl large objects at invading forces. So again, military leading to innovation. And then our second scientist that you need to know is Hippocrates. Hippocrates is the father of Western medicine. If any of your parents or if you ever become a doctor, one of the last things you guys will do in med school is take what's known as the Hippocratic Oath, which is you're swearing that you will do no harm and you will only seek to do good. So all doctors are duty-bound to help the patient in front of them no matter what. And that's the Hippocratic Oath. Couple of math guys here. We've got Euclid is the father of geometry. So those of you that are currently being tortured in that class can blame the Greeks for that. Euclidean geometry is what you are learning right now. Also part of geometry is Pythagoras, creates the Pythagorean theorem, which, for those of you who don't know, a squared plus b squared equals c squared when we're dealing with a right triangle. All right, that gets credit to Pythagoras. So those are a couple of other contributors that you need to know. We've already talked earlier about Homer providing the Odyssey and the Iliad. We've talked about Sophocles and Aeschylus being writers. And then the last thing that we need to talk about are our philosophers. Greek philosophers believe that the universe is put together in an orderly fashion and subject to absolute and unchanging laws. These laws can be understood through logic and reasoning. So our Greek philosophers believe that you can understand everything about our universe. You can understand how it functions, that it all follows a pattern and there is a reason for everything, and they would like to figure it out through logic and reasoning. There are three philosophers that you need to know. The first one is Socrates. Socrates uses the Socratic method to question beliefs and shape arguments. He encourages questioning oneself. That quote there in the middle. My classes, we are talking in Flex about something that Plato recorded that was Socrates' work, which is the allegory of the cave. All right? And in it, Socrates will posit that using questioning and an allegory, which is an example. So some of you who are Christian might know parables are a way that Jesus taught, which is very much the same, where they're teaching with examples. Socrates teaches that we only know and can perceive what we can physically see. So what we know about the world is what we see. And if someone becomes enlightened enough to know more about it, it is their job to come back and help the unenlightened. All right, so Socrates is our first philosopher. He uses questioning to help examine ideas and help people shape their beliefs. One of his students is a guy named Plato. Now, Plato sat there and actually recorded the conversations of Socrates. So Socrates never wrote any of his stuff down. He just liked to be a windbag and talk, kind of like I'm doing right now. Plato's job was to write it down. He wrote down everything. Then eventually, he's going to write a book called The Republic, which will shape political thought for almost 1,500 years. And he's going to create what is known as the Academy. And our last guy is one of Plato's students. Is a guy named Aristotle. All right, he develops logical reasoning, the law of syllogism. So for those of you in classes, if A, then B, and B, then C, then we can assume A, then C. So for example, if it snows, then we don't have school, would be the first assumption. And the second one is if we don't have school, all of the students get to sleep in. Then therefore we can assume if it snows, all of the students get to sleep in. That is the law of syllogism. That is what we call Aristotelian logic. It's developed by Aristotle. It's put into practice in a great way all around the world at all times. He also creates the scientific method, and he's the individual tutor for a guy known as Alexander the Great. All right? Those are our three philosophers, and I will tell you guys the best way to remember our three philosophers and the order they came in is to think of that we're just going to a day at the spa. Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Okay, guys? And that's all for this.
Now watch me whip. Now watch me nay-nay. Okay. Now watch me whip, whip. Watch me nay-nay. Why me do it? Now watch me whip. Watch me nay-nay. Okay. Now watch me whip, whip. Watch me nay-nay.